and look at the number of people who stayed to hear you discuss the film. That's quite a remarkable achievement right there. Could you, in capsule form, explain to us how is it that a film that you received a budget to do on behalf of public television created such an internal storm that it is yet to be presented in an unadulterated form in Germany and has been totally banned by Arte and the French networks?
It's very difficult. I try to be as fast as possible. First of all, I put on this jacket in the sense of self-defense is important. That's why I wear the silk jacket and camouflage. Now, look, I knew it took a year to get the film assigned. It took a year to convince, so to speak, Arte that this is even a topic. For many, many months, they didn't want to acknowledge it as a topic. In between, I tried many, different ways to get it sold. I tried to have Leon de Winter as an host, a great Dutch writer, romancier, who also wrote a couple of articles in German newspapers. He was in 6 days after Charlie Hebdo, 6 days after the hyper-caché market attack, the big conference in Strasbourg, Arte killed him verbally, saying he's Islamophobe. So our project was again on hold. I had to go to with our great editorial lady, who should be here tonight, because she's very brave, from WDR, the lady in charge for Arte. She stick to us and the film till this day, and she's getting a lot of heat in her public TV institution, Sabine Rollberg. So what I'm saying is, I had to meet the info director, the editor-in-chief of Arte, together with her, and he wanted to see whether whether I'm crazy or not, maybe a crusader, I don't know. So he told me this film has to be very objective. Will have to be very objective because Arte France is stuck in between a Muslim and Jewish lobby. So I just smiled. I knew I needed his okay, so I didn't argue or debate. I just smiled like an idiot and nodded and walked out. And we finally got, with a very narrow margin of 1 vote, we got the assignment. I knew that what we were going to do would not make them happy. I didn't expect it to get that bad, that they didn't even talk to us. They didn't say anything. They started to accuse our editorial lady of being crazy, of being drunk, of being an idiot, and that she should take back her editorial okay. She didn't do that, so a proposed meeting in Strasbourg on the 19th of January, which she proposed, was cancelled 2 days before by the French side, by Arte. And from then on I knew, okay, we have a gridlock here, we will not, So I took in 6 expertisen, 6 from very well-known anti-Semitism experts, most of them in Germany, but even also Charles Asher-Small, whom I'm sure you know from ISCAP. And I presented these expertisen to the editorial hierarchy at Arte France and German station WDR, because it is it's a difficult setup, but you need the okay from both basically for the assignment. No reaction on that, none, 0. So they completely from then on isolated also our editorial lady and didn't talk to her basically on this anymore. She was like a, treated like a pariah. Any try from her to get a conversation was cancelled, was ignored. So at some point I knew, okay. Then I went to I started to leak this whole thing to the press, and took also 2-3 months till the first article was written, and then we had a kind of a huge press echo, I must say, in Germany, and slowly also partly in a few articles even in France, which is very kind of slow and restricted in this issue. We had it in Israeli press, we had it in English press even, and then we had one. This still wouldn't have been enough, and we had a lot of press support, to be fair, even from publications where we wouldn't have expected it. And then, last not least, which was the final blow, the biggest German tabloid newspaper called Bild, like picture, did a leak of the film for 24 hours on their online platform. You could see the film, and it was orchestrated with a whole page 3. They committed to this film and the problems of this film. And that was, I think, put up a lot of pressure for public TV. So, like 10 days later, they didn't do any legal measures on it, and they 10 days later aired it, and to make their way of revenge was to say this film has legal problems. They put in like I think 7 tableaus, where they halted the film and said whatever. The Holocaust comparison of that lady, for example, doesn't reflect the attitude of the NGO and things like that. And parallel, they also did every 3 minutes they had a crawl through the picture saying, please also read our fact check on www.wdr. And that fact check, and they later have even admitted that it was not done by experts, and that the press also made fun of it. It was like a fake news. It basically was an opinion check, where they, so to speak, on many parts, showed their true face, that they're on the other side. Basically, I mean, they criticized us for doing, for example, that we criticize Abbas, and that. And he didn't say wells, he said water poisoning, so it's a big difference, huge difference, for example. And in that way they tried to, so to speak, say we are how can I say? In any case, I said, well, of course, I admit this is a pro-Jewish film, and I have and I don't know how to do on this topic a so-called objective film. And I think the main problem is that there are many films out there which are being run by public TV and have a very pro-Palestinian message. Just recently, again from Arte, which was criticized, which took in an author lady who's siding even with Hamas. At directing the 16-minute film, and it's not possible to in this whole orchestra of pro-Palestinian documentaries to do a pro-Jewish film on the topic of European anti-Semitism without this kind of opposition, which we only managed to overcome, to be fair, because of the alliance with a lot of press publications. Otherwise, we would have, been not talked about. We would have gone under with this, and this would have ended up in a safe at WDR and Arte, basically.
Well, they say that a person is known by their enemies. When the Wiesenthal Center first learned of this outrage, we announced sight unseen that if no one else is going to broadcast this documentary, we would. And tonight's presentation is at the beginning of our relationship with this effort. We have a couple of other clever Zionist conspiratorial ideas that we're discussing, but we also will work very hard to present this film at the European Parliament and to try to give the people who deserve more than just a stomachache a few sleepless nights along the way. So we really congratulate and thank you for just being a truth teller.
I said at lunch before, hopefully more than a few sleepless nights, that would be of course even better, but the Wiesenthal Europe Center in Paris issued that wonderful press release, and I'm sure that France and the Arte guys were were really, of course, highly worried about that. The press release that that Wiesenthal Center Europe is stating that the way Arte treats this film does not comply with the working definition of anti-Semitism of European Parliament, and that the Wiesenthal Center Europe is fighting for a viewing in front of European Parliament. And this news release alone, I think, was so scary for the Arte. I imagine it's the worst they could face, of course. So in the end, the Arte showed the German viewing like 20 minutes or what, 50 minutes later, but with the same kind of censorship remarks, just simply translated into French.
For those people in the audience who travel anywhere in Europe, you'll know that you open your TV set. Arte is a major network. It has both, I think, French and German presentations. It's kind of a PBS type cooperative between the two countries, they still, as far as we're concerned, have the moral obligation to screen this film the way it was meant to be. I'm going to come in a moment to Sophie Hafner to ask her a question, but first I want to come to Rick Tranck, who got some of the few gray hairs that he has. You notice he has a lot of hair, and it's a very sensitive subject for some of us here in the room. But one of, I think, Rick's most difficult and challenging undertakings in 17 documentaries was a documentary called Ever Again, a snapshot of the earliest manifestations of what we now saw, the disaster that we saw unfold on the screen. And I thought, Rick, this would be an appropriate time to share some of the challenges in making the film and your reflection on the reaction to it.
To finding out about this weird nexus that you guys illustrated in the movie between the right wing and the left wing against Israel and against Jews. So, I mean, the thing that for me watching this tonight, because I often tell people that was, Ever Again was the hardest film we ever made, and every single thing that we were covering in that film, came true. Nothing, people would look at it today and say, it's mild compared to looking at this. But then seeing like how much worse it's gotten in places like Sarcelles, like what's going on in Paris. I don't know if you got to England and covered anything there.
Didn't manage to, but we decided in the end that it's in the end more of the same. Not that they wouldn't have deserved it, but we said more of the same. So we said we have to go to Israel and to Gaza to try to answer some of these ressentiments. I understand you didn't get much praise for your film at the time either, right?
It was, it was strange because in a couple of places we got very good reviews. A couple of places we got reviews that, I wished I didn't have to read. But there are a lot of people, it did well in the theaters. I mean, we theatrically release all of our films, and interestingly, in a lot of places, you hope with a documentary, if you get a week or two in a theater, that's good. This was held over in a number of theaters. And even though it's 12 years later, people are still buying it, they still use it. So, and I have friends of mine who tell me that of the movies that I've made, they liked all my movies, but this one is the one that still resonates with them. So I'd be curious, for them to see your film. And for some of the people, in fact, in the biggest Jewish newspaper in LA, we were accused in one column of exaggerating the problem, and it came out the week that the film was opening in LA. So that was the other thing that I don't know if this is something that you came up against too, where the Jewish community itself, or some of the leaders in the Jewish community were very uncomfortable with what we were doing.
Not so much. I mean, I understand that Sami Gozlan for a long time was considered by the official Jewish CRIF in France, was considered to be an exaggerating parvenu, so to speak. I mean, he built up as an ex-cop and his pension plan because he knew what was going on, so to speak, on the ground level, and he foresaw the upcoming problem of also brutal attacks. So he built up, which I think I really draw my hat, this organization in France by, from scratch, as so to speak, and he became, with his organization, the so-called watchdog of anti-Semitism. And as you said before,
they said, why are you talking to him?
He showed, so to speak, the official guys that, and he convinced them eventually, unfortunately, of course, sad enough, that he was right. But of course, there's a fairness, it's like the mixture of appeasement, of not trying not to stick out, of, I mean, we talked at lunch, I mean, we did for another film we shot in Malmö, where there's a small community of 500, 600, maybe 700, I think less Jews left who are all okay if they just hide their Jewishness completely, everything is okay. As soon as they show it in any respect, they have a big problem. So they try to, which is, whether you're right or wrong, it's maybe understandable. You don't want to fight every day, so you try to...
The fact is, people are leaving.
Of
I
course.
mean, there's a huge amount of people, they say more than 10%, I think, of the Jewish community in France is left. You have Belgian Jews leaving, Dutch Jews leaving, and we didn't find that phenomenon 12 years ago when we were making Ever Again. In France, there were some Jews who were kind of thinking out, well, maybe it's time to go, but not like this.
Right. We at the Wiesenthal Center, myself and Dr. Shimon Samuels, who lives in Paris, represents us in Europe. We can personally attest to the incredible bravery of Sami Gozlan, the last guy you saw, who looks, by the way, more like a chazan and a butcher than a police official. That's because Sami was a chazan and a butcher before he became a police official, but fearless. And he took us, and because he knew the Muslim kids, he took us right into the neighborhoods very early on in this phenomenon. He empowered us when we would meet with then Minister of Interior, a guy named Sarkozy, never really made it big afterwards, and Rabbi Heyer's dueling, I don't know what they call it. I don't know if you're an épée fencer or what, but his dueling with the president, President Chirac, in multiple visits. I think President Chirac kind of liked Rabbi Heyer, or actually liked fighting with Rabbi Heyer, verbally, thankfully. But we were empowered by people like Sami Gozlan, who really is just fearless. And if you're with a guy like him who's a little bit older and shorter and can't run as well, and he showed that fearlessness, that reflected onto the people we met, including young Muslims. They always respected that man. So I noticed that, Sophie, you have you study philosophy, which is a great preparation for the street creds you now have from this. I wanted to ask you, I thought that among the so many powerful moments in the documentary, but what you managed to get the young people in Gaza to talk openly about their frustrations and about as far as they could possibly go. What was your, first of all, personally reaction to your experiences in Gaza, and how did the young people come across to you?
I was very surprised about these answers, and we say it in the film, we don't had to ask many people that I think it was, sorry, my English is very bad. So we asked maybe 6 people and 5 are in the film, and they all said the same, and yes, we were both very surprised and happy, by the way, because that's hope, I think, yeah.
Speaking of hope, if I can ask Joachim, what would you tell our audience, among them are survivors of the Holocaust, to see these images and to hear these words and to see the mob going, young mob walking to try to break into a synagogue on the Sabbath? It must be particularly difficult moments for the survivors, but you gave me the impression when we met this afternoon, you're a pretty optimistic type of fellow, a very positive person. And
Starting on dessert.
yeah, well, we didn't take any chances. We made sure we gave them a good experience at Pat's. But is there anything that you can share from the film, but also from your interactions, any ray of hope in terms, A, of Jewish continuity in the countries you covered, B, who's going to prevail eventually with this generation of Muslims, and C, what about the political establishment in Germany and France?
Ooh, that's a
Easy question.
yes, absolutely.
That's why we got dessert for you.
Do you have another one?
Never asked that of a rabbi. Never.
In all honesty, I mean, I don't know. Sophie should maybe say something too. I don't see much hope. The majority as always doesn't care. The majority, looks away. We can discuss how big, so to speak, some kind of anti-Semitic texture is in the mainstream or not. I guess to a large degree it is. I wouldn't state that the majority are aggressive anti-Semites, but it's definitely there. It's a culture which is alive, a traditional culture, and because of that, and because it's has become, the film. If to do films and books on Nazis is easy because they are tabooed and they are a wonderful scapegoat, and they're easy. I don't want to downplay them. It's bad enough that they exist, but it's even worse because they're a clear enemy. It is much worse that there's a mainstream sentiment today where when you talk about Israel, when you talk about anti-Semitism, people either try to immediately change the topic or via the detour of Auschwitz, you end with the famous word, but, and you end on the Israeli discussion, but don't they? And over the 1.5 years, we were doing this on a film, or even more nearly, and we had 9 hours of. It was a horror. The worst in this film was post-production. It was awful nights and days because we had 9 hours of rough cut, and we were also shooting in Hungary where we met Gabor, and he organized the shoot for us there. We wanted to also focus on, have one aspect on the Jurassic Park of anti-Semitism, so to speak, so let's go to Hungary. But we found out that it's not fair to do it in 5 minutes. We would have had to, use more time for that. But interesting enough, what I'm really missing, like many things in this film, is that the modern, more intelligent right-wingers like Jobbik also have changed to anti-Zionist, pro-Palestinian rhetoric. And I don't know what the hope is. I have no idea. I would love to say that there's big hope. I don't know. I don't see it really. No. I don't see any massive changes. You have people, yes, you have small circles of people who are in all parties, by the way, to be fair, who are aware of this problem, yes. But in a general sense, it's the famous fight against the, how do you call it, windmills. And I think there's a sentiment that it gets this topic even gets on most people's nerves. It's like, why are you doing this? For what reason? And and I think the sentiment is more and more, and that's why many Jewish organizations, I think, are trying to downplay it, because this, people don't want to hear it. it's like, don't get on our nerves, and and without saying it publicly, well, then go to Israel, then go, but don't cause problems. And
Right.
that's, I'm afraid, the overall sentiment.
Well, I think we all want to thank you for getting on their nerves. Sophie, do you want to add a word on this?
Maybe I have to say there was a bright debate in press in Germany, and that is maybe a little bit of hope. And there are not much, but some people, some politicians who stand beside us, and they are left-wingers, by the way. Yeah. So it's not a great thing, but maybe something.
That's, by the way, true. And we drove many thousands of kilometers, and we had many fierce political discussions on left versus conservative. But I think it reflects in the film. And it's, to be fair, yes, also on the public debate, on the press debate, we had from more conservative newspapers to left-wing newspapers, actually much more support than we thought we would have. And that's true. That is actually a positive signal that, fair enough, at least that was possible and that happened and that kind of support was there. But what I was saying before is, on these 15, 16, whatever, on these months we worked on this film, or even more, I was often asked by people, what are you doing? And I said, a film on European anti-Semitism. And people you expect to be maybe not very political, but okay. And in 95% of the cases, it was like, a short second of silence and then next topic.
Before we end for the evening, I just want to, a lot of people have asked, the Wiesenthal Center is going to do what it can to help give further opportunities and platforms for this film to be seen. If anyone here would like more information or has some ideas about some film festivals, other communities, please be in touch with either Rick or myself, and we'll do our best to share that information. But I think everyone who's here tonight owes both of you and Gabor and your whole team an amazing debt of gratitude for being truth tellers. And we thank you from traveling all the way from Germany to be with us tonight.
Again, thank you for having us. Pleasure and honor to be here.